For as long as I could remember, I believed in love. The kind of love you read about in quiet moments between chores, gentle, unwavering, full of soft glances and promises kept. Even as a shy girl growing up in a bustling household, I carried that dream close to my heart. So when I met Adnan, everything about him seemed to fit that picture. He wasn't loud or flashy. He was kind. He noticed small things, how I tucked my hair behind my ear when nervous, how I hesitated before speaking. We married after a brief engagement, and on our wedding night, he held my hand and whispered, "I'll always take care of you." We moved into his family's large ancestral home, an old structure with sprawling rooms and creaking staircases. His step-uncle, a man named Kaleem, lived with us. Everyone spoke of him as someone respectable, though I couldn't ignore the way his eyes lingered a beat too long whenever I entered a room. Still, I told myself I was imagining it. The early months of marriage were blissful. Adnan worked long hours, but he called me every afternoon just to check in. He would bring me sweets on his way home, sit with me over dinner, and listen as I told him about my small victories of the day, learning a new recipe, arranging the living room just so. Then, one morning, 2 months into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. The test strip in my hand confirmed it, but it was the quickened rhythm of my heart that truly made it real. Tears of joy blurred my vision. This was everything I'd wanted: a family of my own, a child to love, a husband to grow old with. Adnan was overjoyed when I told him. He lifted me off my feet and spun me around in the small kitchen, laughing. For the first time, the house truly felt like home. But in the days that followed, something shifted. Kaleem began appearing at odd times, as if waiting for moments when I was alone. Once, as I hung laundry on the roof, he appeared behind me, leaning against the wall, saying nothing, just watching. Another time, he brushed past me in the hallway, his shoulder pressing into mine with just enough force to send a shiver down my spine. I tried to dismiss it. He was family, after all. And I was carrying a new life. Surely nothing bad could happen in a home like this, surrounded by people who were supposed to care. That night, I sat by the window of our bedroom, my hand resting protectively over my belly, and whispered to myself, "Even when life feels perfect, sometimes shadows fall where you least expect." I didn't know then how dark those shadows would become. As my pregnancy progressed, the days began to feel heavier. And not just because of the child growing inside me. Adnan's work grew more demanding, often keeping him away late into the evening. He would call, apologetic but exhausted, promising to make it up to me on the weekends. I told him not to worry. After all, this was our future he was working for. But each time I hung up the phone, I was left alone in that vast, echoing house with Kaleem lurking somewhere nearby. At first it was just words. Whispers, really. As I passed him on the stairs one afternoon, he leaned close and murmured, "You're glowing these days. Pregnancy suits you." The tone of his voice made the compliment feel like something else entirely. Another time, I caught him standing outside the kitchen doorway, watching me as I cut vegetables. His stare made my hands tremble. He didn't even pretend to look away when I noticed him. He just smiled faintly and walked off, leaving a trail of unease in his wake. The walls of the house began to close in on me. I found myself avoiding certain rooms, keeping the lights on even during the day, jumping at the sound of footsteps behind me. Then one evening, it escalated. Adnan had called to say he'd be late again. I sat in the living room, half-heartedly sewing, when Kaleem appeared. Without a word, he closed the door behind him. The click of the latch sent a chill through me. I stood quickly, clutching the fabric in my hands. Is something wrong?" I asked, my voice betraying my fear. He stepped closer, his expression calm, but his eyes glinting. "Why do you always run away?" he said. "I just want to talk." But his words didn't match the way his hand reached for mine, gripping it tighter than necessary. My breath caught in my throat as he drew me toward him, his other hand pressing against my shoulder. I froze. My thoughts scattered, my heart hammering. For a moment, I couldn't even speak, just stared at him, pleading silently. "Don't," I finally managed, my voice breaking. But he didn't let go. Not until the sound of the front gate creaked open outside and Adnan's voice called faintly from the yard. Only then did Kaleem release me, his fingers lingering a moment too long. He straightened his shirt, smirked, and left the room as if nothing had happened. I sank onto the couch, my whole body shaking, tears spilling down my cheeks. That night, lying in bed beside my husband, I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I just clutched my belly and whispered to the child inside me. Even when I was pregnant, he didn't stop, and the pain only grew. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of fear and silence. I moved through the house like a shadow, keeping to my room as much as possible, avoiding Kaleem's gaze. But no matter how careful I was, I could feel his presence, like a storm cloud hovering just behind me. His boldness only grew. He would linger in the hallway outside my door, his footsteps deliberate, his voice low as he muttered things I couldn't quite hear but felt in my bones. Every creak of the stairs, every faint knock at the door sent my heart racing. And yet, I said nothing. Each night, I lay next to Adnan, aching to tell him, to make him understand. But every time I opened my mouth, fear sealed it shut. What if he didn't believe me? What if he blamed me? Kaleem's parting words that evening still rang in my ears. No one will take your word over mine. You'd only make things worse for yourself. The weight of those words was suffocating. One afternoon, while dusting the living room shelves, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked nothing like the bride who had once stood there, cheeks flushed with joy. This woman's eyes were hollow, her shoulders slumped, her spirit dimmed. Tears welled up, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to cry openly, without holding back. Later that week, during a routine prenatal checkup, the doctor noticed my trembling hands and the dark circles under my eyes. She asked softly, "Are you all right at home?" Her kindness was my undoing. The words spilled out in broken sobs, a dam finally bursting. I told her everything. How helpless I felt, how trapped I had become in a house that was supposed to be my sanctuary. She listened, her expression gentle but firm. "You don't have to endure this," she said. "You deserve better, and so does your baby. Speak to someone you trust." Her words stayed with me all night. That evening, I dreamed of my unborn child for the first time. In the dream, I was holding her, a little girl with my eyes and her father's smile. She looked up at me and whispered, "Be brave, Mama. Save us." I woke up with tears streaming down my face. But this time, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of resolve. I couldn't stay silent any longer. For the sake of my child, for the sake of the woman I used to be, I would find my voice. Tomorrow, I decided, I would tell Adnan everything. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The house was still and quiet, the air thick with the weight of what I was about to do. My hands shook as I tied my hair back, but my heart was steady in a way it hadn't been for weeks. When Adnan sat down for breakfast, I couldn't meet his eyes at first. He smiled at me, as he always did, but his smile faded when he noticed my trembling fingers and tearful gaze. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I set my tea down, took a deep breath, and finally spoke the words I had been swallowing for so long. "It's Kaleem," I began, my voice cracking. He hasn't left me alone. Even after I told him to stop. Even while I'm carrying your child, My words faltered, but Adnan's face had already hardened. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he demanded, though his anger was not directed at me. His eyes burned with fury, and his jaw tightened as he clenched his fists. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I whispered, "I was scared you wouldn't believe me." Adnan knelt beside me, took my hands in his, and said with quiet conviction, "I believe you. Always. And I promise he'll never come near you again." That evening, after gathering the rest of the family in the sitting room, Adnan stood at my side as he confronted Kaleem. At first, Kaleem denied everything, laughing bitterly and calling me delusional. But Adnan refused to back down, and as the room fell silent, the truth hung heavy in the air. Kaleem's smirk cracked. His voice rose in anger before he stormed out of the house, cursing under his breath. The front door slammed behind him, and with it, the oppressive weight that had haunted me for months seemed to lift. I stood there, feeling the eyes of the family on me, some in shock, some in quiet support. But all I cared about was Adnan's arm around my shoulders and the fierce protectiveness in his eyes. Later that night, as we lay together, he whispered, "You're stronger than you know, and this house will always be your home, safe, as it should be." Months passed, and our daughter was born on a quiet spring morning. As I cradled her in my arms, her tiny fingers curling around mine, I felt a rush of love so powerful it eclipsed every shadow of the past. I kissed her soft cheek and promised, "You'll never know the pain I endured, because your world will be nothing but love." And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to smile. Betrayal had tried to break me, but love had given me the strength to rise.